written culture. Differences between oral and written communication and culture. Any communication that is in written form acquires a permanent and fixed form. One can read and reread it as many times as one likes. Every time the meaning of the written text will remain the same. However, the readers sometimes attribute new meanings to the write-ups according to their own point of view. This usually happens with the poetry. Poems are taken by the readers and audience according to their mood and prevailing situation. The same poem renders joy and sadness at the same time depending on the state of the mind of the reader or listener. Written culture refers to societies or communities where the primary mode of communication and knowledge transmission is written language. In such cultures, information, literature, history, scientific knowledge, and cultural heritage are recorded, preserved, and disseminated through written texts. Oral communication, on the other hand, is dynamic and ever-changing. A speaker may use different words for the same message in its repetition, an act that is not possible in written communication. Since folklore is attributed to rural and uneducated folk, it has come to us mostly in oral form. Though folk are being preserved in written form, but originally these originated in oral form and passed from generation to generation in the same form. Oral form of communication is more powerful than written. It has a direct impact of the listener or a spectator if the orator or the performer is expert in depicting his or her character. Folk in oral form have always been used as a motivation in social and religious matters. Oral culture refers to societies or communities where the primary mode of communication and knowledge transmission is oral or spoken language. In such cultures, information, traditions, stories, history, and cultural values are passed down from generation to generation through spoken words, rather than through written texts. Societies in which people communicate through spoken word and spread stories via word of mouth are deemed oral cultures. Conversely, however, cultures whose stories are shared and preserved through the processes of reading and writing are classified as written cultures. Entangled in this binary distinction is a type of social hierarchy in which those who are part of oral cultures are considered inferior while those who are part of written cultures are believed to be part of a culture that exercises a greater level of mental complexity and superiority. According to Chamberlain, oral cultures are rich in forms of writing non-syllabic and non-alphabetic. These forms of writing, he argues, are evident in woven and beaded blankets, carved and painted trays, poles, doors. Chamberlain continues to argue against the distinctions between the two cultural categories by pointing out that the central institutions of supposedly written cultures are rich with oral traditions, like the ritualistic way that certain things must be said and done in the right order by the right people. By sharing these examples, the author forces the reader to consider the ways in which we are all part of both oral and written cultural traditions and may, in some cases, fail to recognize these elements in our stories and in our societies. Both McNeill and Chamberlain point out that members of Western societies often overlook the oral forms of communication that they practice, and a sense of Western egocentrism becomes clear in this dismissal of oral traditions and the subsequent hierarchy created between written cultures and oral cultures. McNeill continues to argue against the decisive division between oral and written cultures, by discussing technological advances that have blurred the line between the two. Sound files, for example, are oral means of communication but are readily available, easily accessible and permanent on the World Wide Web. Spoken word stories typically are not associated with this type of permanence. Similarly, the definition of written cultures is challenged by technological advances like the use of Twitter and other online mediums of sharing stories, where text can be deleted and can exist as a temporary means of communication. Oral cultures rely heavily on memory for the preservation and transmission of knowledge. Information is retained through memorization, repetition, and oral tradition. Oral cultures often have rich traditions of storytelling, song, chant, and verbal performance as means of communication and cultural expression. Oral traditions may exhibit fluidity and variability, as stories and narratives may evolve over time through oral retelling, adapting to different contexts and audiences. Knowledge sharing in oral cultures is often characterized by communal participation and interaction, with storytelling and oral performances serving as communal activities that strengthen social bonds. Access to knowledge in oral cultures is often localized, limited to those within the immediate community or social group, as information is primarily transmitted through direct interpersonal communication. Written cultures rely on writing as a means of recording and preserving information in a fixed, permanent form. Writing facilitates the standardization and formalization of language, enabling the development of complex societies with legal systems, educational institutions, and scientific knowledge. Written texts can be distributed widely and accessed by a larger audience, transcending geographic and cultural barriers. Writing enables communication across time and space, allowing information to be disseminated to distant regions and future generations. Written texts provide a stable and enduring record of information, reducing the risk of alterations or distortions over time. Once information is written down, it can be preserved in its original form, enabling greater consistency and accuracy in communication. Written culture promotes individual access to knowledge, as written texts can be read and studied independently, empowering individuals to access information autonomously and engage in self-directed learning. Written cultures have been shaped by technological innovations such as writing systems, printing presses, and digital technologies, which have revolutionized the way information is created, stored, and disseminated. In oral cultures, knowledge is transmitted through spoken language, relying heavily on memory and oral tradition. This mode of communication often involves face-to-face interaction, where individuals share stories, myths, legends, and historical accounts orally. The retention of knowledge depends on mnemonic devices such as repetition, rhythm, and storytelling techniques. Oral cultures often prioritize communal memory and collective storytelling, fostering strong social bonds and a shared sense of identity within the community. Written cultures, on the other hand, utilize written texts as the primary means of transmitting knowledge. Writing allows for information to be recorded and preserved in a tangible form, independent of direct interpersonal communication. Written texts can range from handwritten manuscripts to printed books and digital documents. The permanence and accessibility of written records facilitate the dissemination of knowledge across time and space, enabling individuals to access information independently and facilitating the accumulation of knowledge over generations. Oral traditions are characterized by fluidity and flexibility, as stories and narratives may evolve over time through oral retelling. Variations in oral storytelling can reflect cultural diversity and adaptability, allowing narratives to be tailored to specific audiences or contexts. However, this fluidity also introduces the potential for inaccuracies or inconsistencies in the transmission of information. Written texts provide a fixed and stable record of information, reducing the risk of alterations or distortions over time. Once information is written down, it can be preserved in its original form, allowing for greater consistency and accuracy in communication. Written culture facilitates standardization and formalization of language, enabling the development of complex societies with legal systems, scientific knowledge, and educational institutions. Access to knowledge in oral cultures is often limited to those within the immediate community or social group. Oral traditions rely on direct interpersonal communication, which may restrict the dissemination of information beyond local boundaries. However, oral storytelling fosters a sense of communal participation and cultural belonging, as knowledge is shared within close-knit communities through rituals, ceremonies, and gatherings. Written texts can be distributed more widely and accessed by a larger audience, transcending geographic and cultural barriers. Writing enables communication across time and space, allowing information to be disseminated to distant regions and future generations. The widespread availability of written materials promotes literacy, education, and intellectual exchange, contributing to the development of global networks of knowledge and ideas. Traditional oral cultures may be less influenced by technological advancements, as oral traditions rely primarily on spoken language and interpersonal communication. However, modern technologies such as audio recording devices and digital media have facilitated the documentation and preservation of oral traditions, enabling researchers to study and archive cultural heritage. Technological innovations have played a significant role in the evolution of written culture, from the invention of writing systems and printing presses to the digital revolution. Digital technology has revolutionized the way information is created, stored, and disseminated, leading to the proliferation of electronic texts, online publishing platforms, and digital archives. The accessibility of digital information has transformed reading habits, communication patterns, and scholarly research practices in contemporary society. In essence, oral and written cultures represent distinct modes of communication and knowledge transmission, each with its unique strengths and limitations. While oral cultures emphasize the oral tradition, communal memory, and flexibility of storytelling, written cultures prioritize written texts, permanence of records, and accessibility of information. Both forms of culture have shaped human societies throughout history, leaving a profound impact on language, literature, education, and the transmission of cultural heritage.